Good afternoon, YouTube. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. This is going to be a little bit of a vulnerable video for me, even if it doesn't feel like it, but this is a huge step for me in my life, and I want to just put this out here. I'm not sure where this video will reach. I'm not sure if it'll even reach many people at all, but this is the accumulation of several years of my life with immersing myself in understanding of finance, and it might not be that special or crazy. Even just I don't know how this will be received. I'm currently my channel doesn't have many viewers and subscribers. This probably won't change anything. Could, I don't know, but um, I want to give a message to anyone who is a working class individual, someone who's grinding, someone who has to work. Maybe you don't have any future, maybe you don't have any retirement plans, maybe whatever it is, you're at the end, the finish line, what feels like it. Maybe it's a job that you're working at and you're like, there's nowhere else really, this is the only job I can work. And maybe you see some of the headlines of things getting scary and you don't know how bad things are, and you need some help, some help getting some certainty on where you want to move. Maybe you even see the stock market kind of going crazy. And Bitcoin's down, and maybe all of that is like, maybe you see it as a good thing, maybe you see it as a bad thing. Regardless, I'm here to tell you, if you're a working class individual, that it's not all lost. Hope is not lost for you if you do the right things. Not only that, but you can have a lineage. You can have children. You can have many children. You can have a family. You can start something for yourself. You can grow. You can expand. You can get your dreams. You can have everything come true. You can get the lifestyle. I'm not saying everyone will, but my hope is, in the communication that I have in this video, that it helps someone like you, the viewer, get those things. So let's get right into it. But you know, have a drink right here. Made a little bit of it's like a little lemon drop, a little minty lemon drop. Let's get into it while I build a box for my TCG business. So the problem is, a lot of the stuff I'm about to tell you is logical and obvious. That is the problem. Because most of your life you might have been born with this understanding of what's going on, but you probably didn't know that there's actually a way to benefit from the system. So I'm going to start it off with one simple fact, is that the government prints money. True? They print money. They print it out of thin air. You can accept that. It's logical. Well, what does that do to you? What does that do to the dollars in your pocket? What does that do to the dollars that maybe your parents saved, your ancestors saved? What does that do to the future dollars you'll have? What does that do to your future earnings? So I want to explain what that is, and it's going to explain inflation, what inflation is. Now, they're not going to tell you what inflation is, because inflation is the huge mechanism. It's the real trap. Inflation is another way of saying devaluation. Inflation is saying that they're adding to the supply, and what I'm saying is that as they add to the supply, it devalues the existing supply. Maybe that's logical, but maybe you're not really following. Maybe I'm throwing too many words at you, so I'm going to explain it. This is what inflation is. So let's say someone adds to the supply, that devalues the existing supply. So let's take it simpler, and let's go back to, let's say you had 10 apples in the world. So the entire world, there's 10 apples, and obviously I'm saying the apples are $1, but there's 10 apples in the world. So I'm going to give you one apple. So now you have what percentage of the entire apples of the world? You have 10% of the world's apple supply. But what if someone was going to print magically 90 more apples? So the entire apple supply of the world is about to become 100 apples. You still have that one apple. No one has given you another apple. You've never gotten another apple. So you have that one apple in your pocket. So now, when there's 90 additional apples added, what percentage of the total apples? Now you only have 1%. So you had 10% when there was only 10 apples, but as they added apples, and now that there's 100 apples, now you only have 1% of the total apples. So if you think of it like that, if the inflation was 90 apples added, well, your apples were devalued by 90%. So that's why inflation is devaluation. And you can do the math and you can look it up yourself. Look at the valuation of the dollar over the years. Look at the value of the dollar as a chart. There's many reports that will show exactly that math. In fact, think back to your past or ask your parents. When your parents say, back in my day, a burger was only worth, only 10 cents, 25 cents. What they're saying is when they were younger, you didn't need as many apples or dollars to buy the same item. You needed less. But now it seems like you need more. And it's because as they make more and more dollars, as they're printing dollars into existence, and keep in mind they're giving those dollars to someone, but as they print more, whatever was in your pocket, whatever your parents kept under their mattress, or maybe they put in their bank account, or maybe they put into your retirement account or something like that, those dollars are being devalued. So the mechanism is to buy something else. That's what they call assets. And you might be saying, "Oh, that's obvious. That's obvious." But hey, follow me, and maybe there's something that I add that builds to your framework. And maybe it was obvious, but maybe this gives you some action. Because nothing I'm saying is really too alarming, and that's the alarmment. So let's say when there was 10 apples in the world and you had one apple. Let's say there was also flowers, 10 flowers in the world. I have one flower. So you have one apple, I have one flower. There's 10 apples, there's 10 flowers. So we both have 10% of our respective supplies in the world. So if you think about it, all day, you and me could trade. If I thought 10% of the apples is worth 10% of the flowers, we could trade all day. But let's say someone told you, hey, they're about to make 90 apples and add that to the supply. If you had that insider knowledge, you might come to me and be like, hey, so MTG Angel, do you want to trade 1-to-1? I'll get the flower, you'll get the apple, let's go. So we trade. I'm unknowing, I now have the apple, and boom, they add 90 apples to the supply. So I lose 90% of my value overnight. Now you come back to me and you say, yeah, you want to trade that back, but your flowers are kind of devalued. I would trade it back if you had 10 apples. If you had 10 apples, I'll trade it back. Sorry, that's five. Your apples are kind of devalued. Now I need 10 apples, 10%. We were trading 10% all day, so now I need 10% of the world apple supply to trade for my 10% of the world flower supply. So you would have the best of me. So that's what the asset trade is. Now, what does that look like in real time? That's housing markets. That's the stock market. As the stock market rises, think of it, the shares are actually percentages of a company. And if all the percentages of that company are going up, could that maybe equal something around the amount of money being printed and added into the world, sloshing around the world? That's why everything looks like it's going up. It's because what you're pricing it in is getting devalued, getting crushed. So, what does this mean? What does all this really add to you? Well, let's say you're someone who's a working class individual. You need, keep in mind what I'm saying, you need to learn how to buy assets. You need to. Not just for yourself, but for your children, for the chance of children. And not only that, but let's say you do start learning how to buy and sell assets. Well, you would benefit from that. Think of that trade. Let's say you could buy, let's say you had 3 apples and you traded for my 3 flowers. And then when that happened overnight, you could have so many more apples if you trade it back and forth. So you would have your 3 apples, you trade it for 3 flowers. Overnight, boom, they add a bunch of apples. Now when you trade the 3 flowers back, you have 30 apples. So that's why investments go up, is specifically because there's money creation. Money creation's happening. So you're trading your money for assets. You're getting out of what's being created, what's being inflated, or what's being devalued. You're getting out of that, and then you're coming back into it when you need it. Maybe you need to buy a house or something, and obviously money is the medium that we're trading. I'm not saying that it's not used as a medium, but what I'm saying is, if you want more money, just get out of it for a bit. Use your money to buy something that's not money. Don't hold dollars. So, what are some things that you could be buying, or what are some things that you could be investing in? Well, obviously you want to buy something that the supply is a bit more fixed. So that's why a lot of people like gold, is because they're not printing gold. That's also why they like stocks, because stocks, they're slices of a company and they're always going up, because as consumers it builds, and as people feel the stress of, hey, there's no point to hold my money, I might as well spend it. And so they're buying company goods. So you're seeing that happen with companies. Companies are absorbing a lot of that. A lot of people, when they get the money, they're like, hey, I need to invest in somewhere or else I'm going to lose my value. People instinctively know. You instinctively know. It's just a lot of people don't have that push to actually invest your money. It feels like you just spend your money. It's like you got to get rid of the money, but you don't want to just waste it. You want to invest it. And then also that's why a lot of people like Bitcoin, because it's a fixed money. There's only going to be 21 million. So if you're pricing Bitcoin and comparing it to the dollar, and the dollar's constantly inflating, and Bitcoin, let's say it's the flower and the dollar is still the apple, well, it's going to look like Bitcoin goes crazy against something that's getting completely devalued. Um, that's why a lot of people like Pokemon and TCG investments, because those are fixed supply, and then after a certain amount of time they stop making more. And if the demand stays and people are destroying these items, well, it's going to look like these things are going up crazy in value. So that's a couple ideas, and that's kind of a lot of my framework. Really, what I think is happening right now in the world is that the internet is distracting a lot of people from finding a lot of useful information, asking good questions. There's so much entertainment, and that entertainment keeps you away from thinking about your life. It keeps you thinking like, man, life sucks so much. I just want to take my mind off of everything. I just want to have to work a little less. And unfortunately, if you don't have the work done to learn about assets, well, the internet is there to completely distract you from making the steps you need to really escape this hamster wheel. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the hamster wheel of life. So let's say you're working a 9 to 5, and let's say you spend all your money. Well, I know where you're going to be next week, back to work. Let's say I'm an employer. I want you for the longest amount of time possible. So not only will I keep that information away of how you can escape, let's say you're making tons and tons of money trading apples and flowers, well, you're going to escape my system. You're not going to work for me anymore because you're going to be fine on your own. So I can't have that. I can't allow that. So not only am I going to keep this information away from you, but from an early age, I'm going to train you to be a good worker, a good, obedient worker. And not only that, but I'm not going to pay you enough to actually escape my system. And I want you to work for 40 years, 40, 50 years. So when did you plan on retiring? Maybe it was 65. Maybe you never even knew. That's a good thing for someone who's a manager. It's a really good thing for a manager. Because if you don't know when you're retiring, then that means you're staying forever. You have no plans to leave me. So I have almost like a slave. If I had infinite money, I have a slave working for me. Yeah, sure, you can spend your time outside of my work and spend some time, away from that. And you can buy things, and I'm paying you monetarily, so you're getting some value out of it, out of being a slave for me. But on the other hand, any employee is working for an employer. The employer is almost a slave master, and the employee is the slave. Now, it doesn't look as dirty. It's not as bad of a system. Pretty close. So, yes, it's a long road to escape serfdom, slavedom. But on the other hand, if you want a family, if you want a legacy, if you want to be greater than what you are, you don't have much of a choice. And I just want to leave you with this one thing before I leave the video. And what do you want from your life? I think it's easy for us to think to live just mediocre, just live an average life, live something basic. Because it's it's comfortable. You don't have to tell anyone that you're trying to make millions and millions of dollars. Maybe it was you never had crazy dreams, and so it's like very odd. It would be very odd for you to suddenly say like, "Hey, I want to be a multimillionaire." It's like, what do you mean, dude? That's not you. But what if you actually wanted that? What if you were just too afraid to say it and fess up and kind of say, "Hey, I want the most out of my life, and maybe I do want multiple millions of dollars." Is that really too bad to say? For me, I would love multiple millions of dollars. Not really to buy Lambos. That's not really my main motivation. My main motivation is just to reclaim my time. It's to escape slavery forever. Now, think of it like this. Let's say, I don't know if you've heard of a high yield savings account, but if you have your money in Chase and you're getting like 0.01%, get a high yield savings account, any of them, because at least you're getting 3, 4%. A high yield savings account gives you, let's say, 3%. What amount of money that you're living on right now could give you that same amount from 3% of it being held in that account? Well, let's say you're making about, let's say, 70K. Let's say you're making 70K. Well, you need about 3 million in the bank, and every year you should be getting about 70, 80, 90K automatically. Now, million sounds like a lot, maybe, but really, what if your parents were able to give it to you? What if you're able to bestow that legacy down to your kids to give them multiple millions? That would have been amazing for your parents to do, and that would be amazing for you to do for your kids. So really, what you're building for is not just your lifetime, but if you want kids, you can build for your entire lineage's lifetime. Your assets can grow for an entire lineage. Now it's easier than ever. Imagine putting something in some type of time capsule that will be given to your kids, and it was an investment. Maybe it's like an allotment of Bitcoin, or maybe it was some stocks that were somehow, locked away, or maybe it was a fortune of gold or whatever asset. And fast forward in the future, and you give your entire fortune away to your kids, and now they can live happily. Or maybe because you've grown this, and maybe the economic system in the world changes, you could benefit from that cash pile of assets, and you could benefit from that system of the increase of apples being added. And since you have bought flowers, it looks like your flowers are worth more apples, when really there's just too many apples being created. This might have been all over the place, but I really hope some of this helped. Guys, you're listening to MTG Angels. I would say this is my base framework, base financial framework, and this is really what's driving not only my desire to invest in trading cards, but to purchase and invest into financial assets like Bitcoin. Pretty much it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Leave a comment if you somehow made it through this 18-minute, 19-minute video. Let me know what you think. Maybe you think it's all cap. Maybe you think it's all stupid. Maybe it didn't help you at all. Or maybe it's inspired some action for you, and maybe it'll help you build into the future. And maybe you come back to this video after, who knows, your whole life seems to have changed and passed from following some knowledge or some point of advice. Investment tips. Bitcoin, right now it's 73K. I think it's going to be $1 million. Any trading cards, any Magic the Gathering collector boxes, even some draft boxes, commander decks, but mostly collector boxes, and any Pokemon booster boxes. Right now, Ascended Heroes Elite Trainer boxes are 180. Lord of the Rings Special, 5,000, 4,500, around that. You got, Hobbit, it's not out yet, but any of this stuff, man, anything that's a fixed supply asset just looks so crazy to the face of the amount of dollars being printed. So I'll leave you like that. Peace, guys.